Most folks who have probably been familiar with wrestling and video games from back in the late 90s, early 2000s are probably familiar with WWF Wrestlemania 2000 for the Nintendo 64. The first WWF video game released by THQ, the beginning of a long, fruitful relationship that continues to this day, and the precursor to what many consider to be the finest wrestling game ever made, No Mercy. However, THQ also released Wrestlemania 2000 for the Game Boy Color. Not only that, but this Game Boy Color cartridge was backwards compatible with the original Game Boy and Game Boy Pocket monochrome systems. How does this portable iteration of Wrestlemania 2000 fare? Pretty good, actually. There's a variety of modes in Wrestlemania 2000: Versus, Championship, Tag Team, Survivor Series, Gauntlet, Training, and the two-player head-to-head mode. Versus is your regular exhibition singles match. Championship mode is the storyline mode, where you pick a wrestler to fight off opponents before challenging first for the Intercontinental title, then the WWF Championship, and eventually fighting Mr. McMahon in a one-on-one showdown. Tag Team is your usual tag team match. Survivor Series is a 3-on-3 mini gauntlet elimination match. No tagging into this mode, it's just fighting mini matches and stuff like that. There's the Gauntlet mode, which is essentially a survival mode pitting you against the rest of the game's superstars. And finally, the Training mode, where you can practice your offensive moves and take out your frustrations on an inanimate dummy. There's also a biography section where you can check out the bios for all the featured superstars in the game. A nice touch if there ever was one. Oh yeah, there's also a cage match. Slam your opponent against the cage to stun them momentarily, then pummel them enough so that you would have an opening to climb out of the cage and win the match. Classic stuff. The gameplay in Wrestlemania 2000 is pretty simplistic. Controls comprise a strike button and a grapple button, and pressing this in conjunction with the D-pad will allow you to perform a variety of wrestling maneuvers such as pile drivers and Irish whips. While each wrestler possesses a similar arsenal of wrestling moves at their disposal with a couple different moves here and there, the truly distinguishing feature obviously is the wrestler's unique finishing maneuver that can be performed whenever the gold portion of this biorhythm meter on top is filled. Biorhythm is interesting because it's different for each superstar, and this alone determines how often the superstar can perform his finisher. There's no need to build momentum or whatever the case may be. Just wait until that small box is completely full and you're ready to go. Now while the meter is full, you can perform as many finishers as you would like, and this usually results in an academic pinfall victory. Of course, it should be noted that like most sports entertainment video games, finishers can only be performed from certain positions. Most finishers can be performed when your opponent's in a grapple, but some can be done while your opponent's been grounded. Of course, you could win the match without ever having to stun someone silly, it just takes a tad longer. Barring the conditions of executing finishers, I found the game to be extremely easy to get into, and picking this one up after many years of not having played it, I was pleasantly surprised by how easy I was able to get the hang of the controls and just figure out what in the heck I'm doing. There's usually a bit of a learning curve whenever I try to get back into an old wrestling game that I haven't played in years, but not so for WrestleMania 2000. I was playing the game almost like I was playing it yesterday. Admittedly, it can be troublesome to lock onto a grapple at times, but for the most part the gameplay is pretty solid and controls work wonders, so I can't really complain all that much. It works. It's good. The visuals are fairly basic stuff with rough renditions of the superstar portraits. It's not top-notch quality, don't expect it to be, and they look like monochrome images that happen to have color splashed on afterwards in Photoshop or something, but it's serviceable portraits and fairly recognizable stuff, so in that regard it works well enough. The mini Titantron entrance videos that play during the championship mode are a nice touch and good enough for what it is, with a little clip show playing and the taunt from your championship opponent. It's not much to look at, but the entrances are a nice bonus considering past Game Boy games or 8-bit wrestling games in general usually skip them. The ring seems a bit big for my taste, but that's not a big deal or anything, it looks alright. Crowd's not anything special, they're sort of just there, which is not too bad, except when you're in the training mode, it's in an empty training gym or stuff. As for the various superstars, there's not much in terms of detail, but they're somewhat distinguishable from each other, so you won't have to worry about figuring out who's who. You can easily distinguish between a Rock or a Ken Shamrock or a Mankind or a Kane who's completely red, or what have you. Wrestlemania 2000's a Game Boy Color black cartridge, which means this game is backwards compatible with older monochrome Game Boys, and it looks alright even without a color. You can still recognize some of the superstars, no biggie. Sound is a bit of an above average package, for lack of a better term, with few music tracks and a handful of decent sound effects that are serviceable at best, but not much more than that. And the limited number of music pieces they did include can get repetitive after a while, but at the very least none of it is the least bit offensive, At best, I found the action tune that plays during matches to be quite catchy, but that's just me. Eventually it does get tedious after a while, and you could easily turn off the sound in the options menu, but whatever. Overall, Wrestlemania 2000 is a satisfying wrestling game that offers a nice rounded package with a variety of game modes, a nice balance of superstars, and gameplay that is easy to get into without feeling dumbed down. It's probably one of the better 8-bit WWF video games that I've come across, and perhaps one of the better wrestling games that I've encountered on the Game Boy at least. Looks pretty good, sounds alright, plays great, loads of fun, can't complain. It's great stuff.